Want to welcome everybody. My name's Lauren Brown. I'm the president of Healthy Seminars. I'm also a doctor of Chinese medicine. I have my practice in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And this is our first of what I hope will be many Throwback Thursdays. This one is on March 26th, 2020. And the world has been told to go to its room and reflect. It's basically what's happening in the world right now. I'm not even going to give what's going on too much energy. We'll call it, from a Chinese medicine perspective, the guest. We have a guest, a collective guest on planet Earth. And for many of us, our practices have closed. For many of us, we're contemplating closing our practices. And we've been put into a form of physical isolation. Many of us are in physical isolation as of now. Some just started, some have been for many days already, and some are getting ready to start the process. And I use the word physical isolation because the society started off calling it social isolation. And I think it needs to be, as many others, it needs to be rebranded. It's a misleading term because although we can have physical distancing like we all have here, it doesn't mean we have social isolation. And that's actually worse than the guest that's in the world right now. Not having that sense of belonging community is not good for our health. And so, Throwback Thursday, the idea is to create that sense of community and belonging where we can practice physical distancing. And we're doing what we're calling social innovation and social solidarity. And these are terms that the Chinese medicine profession, some of the leaders in the field have started using the term social solidarity and social innovation. And so I encourage you to use physical distancing and social innovation or social solidarity because we're together here. What will happen is every Thursday for the next little while, we're going to do a Throwback Thursday. We're going to pull a lecture from Healthy Seminars or the old Pro-D legacy or the Medagogy legacy or Integrated Fertility Symposium. And we're going to be together like we are today. I think the first 100 the camera can be on. And we're going to watch a lecture together. And then when the lecture's over, you can raise your hand electronically if you go to the bottom of the screen, for those who are watching this as a live webinar, there is a manage participant, or there's a participant icon at the very bottom of your screen. If you hover your mouse there, you can raise and lower your hand. And at the end of the lecture, if you raise your hand, we'll unmute you so you can comment, ask questions, whatever you want about that lecture. And then at some point, we're going to turn everybody's mics on that want it. We'll unmute you all, and we can just start saying hi to each other. If you want to see who's on, there is an arrow from the left or right of the screen, because right now there's at this point as we're starting, there's 11 pages for me of 25 faces. So if you want to, so right now you're seeing the 25 of the first people that kind of came on, but if you hit the arrow button in the middle of your screen on your desktop, if you're on a desktop, you can scroll through and see all the people that we have on here. We have right now just over 260 people that have joined us to hear Dr. Leon Hammer. So we have Throwback Thursday with you on Healthy Seminars, and we also started Conscious Tuesday. So Randine Lewis did one on March 24th, and we keep the recordings like this up for 48 hours. So you have this, if you got 48 hours to watch this recording. Randine's will be going down today or tomorrow. It's on the Healthy Seminars website. That link for Conscious Tuesday is called healthyseminars.com/com. And the purpose of that one is to give a place for practitioners who are experiencing fear, lack, anxiety, a place to lean into with their other colleagues and to learn self-care for themselves so they can calm down that nervous system so they can stay grounded, which is good for your health, and take the tools that these practitioners are sharing with us and then start to share them with your community. So many of you are going to start to do virtual consults or telemedicine, and a lot of people are experiencing a lot of anxiety right now. And your value will be on sharing that self-care. So you come to Conscious Tuesday to fill up your basket, to get those grounding tools, to get that theory from a Chinese medicine perspective. And then you take that and take that to your community. So we got Conscious Tuesdays and go to healthyseminars.com/com for that. And then we got healthyseminars.com/throwback Thursday, I think is the URL, where we get together and just watch a lecture. I would like to let you know that we're also starting on April 6, 2020, a support group. It's how to do telemedicine for pregnant clients. So it's a very specific telemedicine because there are people that are pregnant now and the babies will not wait for this to pass. And a lot of women who are pregnant are worried about this guest in our society, and they need reassurance. And is there a value that we can offer? Because Chinese medicine is not just acupuncture, diet and lifestyle, qigong, herbal medicine. And so the following practitioners are going to lead this group starting April 6th on how to do telemedicine with pregnant clients and the value you can offer and some of the things you want to share. And the first one, April 6th, they're going to share some of their early data on babies being born to pregnant women, what they're seeing and noticing. So you can hopefully share that with your pregnant clients. But we're going to have Deborah Betts from New Zealand as one of the facilitators of this on April 6th. We have Claudia Sikovitz from the USA. We got Kate Levitt from Australia. And we have Emily Solomons from Canada. She's actually my colleague at AcuBalance Wellness Center in Vancouver. And so those are the things that we want to do to bring community. And the purpose of this, what Healthy Seminars role right now for you guys is we want to keep that connection together. And so this is what we're doing. Right now, we want to keep that social solidarity, create community, and find ways for do our own self-care so we stay healthy and well, and then we be the light to our community and take this to our community. So Sandra, if you can bring up the video, we're going to start the lecture with Dr. Leon Hammer momentarily. I will let you know that I called Leon yesterday to let him know I was doing this. We're going to look to see if he comes on. He was debating whether he would try and join this, if he could figure it out to join it, and if he could have him part of the discussion. I don't know. We'll search to see if he's on there. But I want to let you know that Dr. Leon Hammer is 96 and a half. And in my conversation with him yesterday, he had to have a necessary surgery a little while back, and he's recovered well. He's very happy with his recovery. He's doing great. He's in isolation, taking care of himself with his wife. And he's busy. He's writing books. He's published a few already. He's got 2 more he's writing. So he's still working away. And he tells me he loves to nap, and reminding me that his mentor, the late John Chen, used to recommend daily naps. And so he went on to lecture me when we were talking that I must make sure I continue my naps. And he did say that he's really experiencing such incredible peace when he has naps, that he's a little reluctant to get up from his naps because he's in such a beautiful, peaceful state. So I thought it would be wonderful to start with Dr. Leon Hammer for our first Throwback Thursday, because the topic is on the heart-mind connection. This was filmed by the college he founded, Dragon Rises College of Oriental Medicine, and I have permission from Leon Hammer to share this again. We once played this on the legacy site of Medagogy, and that's why we're going to do this again. So hang in here through the whole thing. Check out each other's images while you listen. Feel free to chat. This is what it's about in the chat room, to communicate, to connect. And at the end, we will raise our hands electronically through the participant button at the bottom of your screen, and love to hear what you have to share based on that talk. So Sandra, if you're ready, let's start that lecture with Dr. Leon Hammer.
Chinese medicine has been for me the fulfillment of a search for a congenial system of healing. It is a personal, subtle, gentle, yet highly technical medical system which allows me to be close to the essence, to the life force, both of my own and that of others. It's a masterpiece of harmony, intricacy, and movement, which never ceases to engage me. never ceases to fascinate me and intrigue me. Okay, we've been talking about stability, and we talked about the heart and the triple burner. And the question came up, how do we assess the strength of the heart? And that's something that really Western medicine is pretty good at in terms of the physical functioning of the heart. And we all know, those symptoms: stabbing, pain down the left arm, needle burning, like burning in the chest, shortness of breath. I remember one day a student, there was a patient coming to see one of the students, and the student was rather confused about what was wrong with this particular patient. And I just so happened to have come into the school at the same time that this patient was coming into the school. And the patient got out of a car, walked about 5 steps. The student was actually waiting for them outside. This is when we were on 8th Avenue. And stopped after about 5 steps. Then she took about another 5 or 6 steps and stopped. And then she took a couple of more steps, came to the steps that led up into the college, and stopped again. And then she took a few steps and stopped. And by the time she got up to where the student was, he said he'd seen her before, and he was very perplexed and didn't understand what was wrong. And I said, well, she just showed you what was wrong. I mean, if somebody has to stop after walking 5 steps, what could possibly be wrong with them? Either they're in extraordinary pain and can only move a certain amount, or they're out of breath. And so either they have some kind of severe lung problem, in which that can only walk a couple of steps, or what is the most common cause of shortness of breath. In a person that age, this woman was around 80. And he was thinking for a while. I mean, and I think everybody in this room knows the answer. I mean, she had heart failure. And that was the reason. So shortness of breath is one of the most important ones. People complain about suffocating sensations in their chest. In terms of Chinese medicine and Western medicine, people who have very cold perspiration, and usually in the middle of the day, that's kind of oily. It's usually a sign of heart failure. And there are all kinds of sleep patterns that involve the heart, which is not something I'm going to go into at the moment. People have a swelling of their fingers, swelling of their ankles, pitting edema where you can put your finger in. People who can't lie on the left side of their chest. Different kinds of palpitations. Again, I'm not going to go into the details. Some have to do with the heart. They always have to do with the heart being vulnerable. And that's a concept that's basic in Chinese medicine. That is, at whatever trauma there is, whatever negative experience there is always going to affect the organ that's most vulnerable. Some people it's the lung, some people it's the heart. It can be any of them, but some more importantly or more often, because if you think of it, the heart is beating starting in utero. Somebody was just telling me about somebody 100 years old who was writing a book or wrote a book. I mean, that heart has been beating regularly for 100 years or more. So certain organs tend to wear out faster than others, and the heart is probably the one that wears out the fastest. And if you notice, most people, until recently, die of heart attacks. So these are the physical kinds of things, sensations of something rushing up to the chest. But even if there's a problem in another organ, like the liver, sometimes you'll get palpitations, usually at rest, because you know that even though the problem isn't necessarily in the heart, it's coming from some other place, but that heart is vulnerable and requires attention. And there are all kinds of emotional issues that involve the heart, but this is more in terms of Chinese medicine. I was asked to comment on the relationship, or how I came to understand the relationship between the heart and the mind, or as it was put, the thinking mind. And the answer
the thinking heart.
To that.
The thinking heart. It was put as the thinking heart.
Yes.
You said the thinking mind.
In Chinese medicine, there's something called a relationship between the kidney, which, as my teacher said, is at the bottom, and the heart, which is on the top, and the harmony between them, which incidentally is mediated by the triple burner that we talked about before. The kidney, I think I mentioned, controls the essence. The essence resides in the bone marrow, which incidentally makes half of the red blood cells and all of the white blood cells in the body, and the brain, which people have been studying, can't figure out yet after thousands of years. But the kidney controls this essence. It's also called marrow, and the brain is part of that essence and that marrow. And the brain essentially is what you do in order to get across the street without getting killed. It's your ego. It's the linear part of your function. It's science. It's everything that goes in a logical fashion. And the kidney controls that function. So that the world today is dominated by this statistical linear. Everything is decided by statistics. Everything that we value, the camera that's taking my picture, the computer that you're going to use, this all has come through linear thinking. Einstein said that, I have a quote here somewhere that I'd have to go looking for, but he said that that kind of thinking doesn't really lead to anything worthwhile or important. It's the thing that comes to you all of a sudden, the aha experience that opens up in the world. And if you, interestingly enough, follow his 5 papers that he wrote in 1905 that changed physics and the world forever, they were all aha experiences. None of them are based on mathematics. They were all a certain insight into reality that came to him that way. Epiphanies, if you want to call them. So there's, the kidney that controls the marrow, that makes it possible for us to create all these machines and live with them or die with them. And then there's that other function, that this beautiful, mysterious function, that aha experience, which comes from nowhere, and you have no idea where it came from. Now, the Chinese call that the mind, and they say the heart controls that. And I'll tell you how I learned about it. I learned about it starting around 1961. Of course, I had gone through by that time 4 years of a scientific high school, 4 years of a chemistry major and a zoology minor, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of an internship and a residency. This is all science. Nobody's used up their kidney more than I did. I think altogether I spent 19 years, or somewhere around that. And at that time I had this epiphany about healing, which I mentioned yesterday, that the most important part of healing is touch. That came to me mysteriously. But in 1961, I think I mentioned I had bought a house where I had no money at that time, but I bought this place. I couldn't resist it. At the same time, it was my son's 5th birthday, and he always wanted a dog. So I found a dog out in the country. That's a long story, a short story, but fascinating, but I won't go into it. And this dog was a Chesapeake Bay Retriever. We were living on the water on weekends at that time, and this dog was a water dog. And my son named her Hasey because she was acting crazy. But my wife, from whom I was separated at the time, refused to let the dog in her house. So the dog, Hasey, Chesapeake Bay Retriever, came to live with me. I lived around the corner and saw my son frequently. And he was with me on these weekends. And I was working as a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst. So people came to me on an hourly basis. They knocked on the door, opened the door, came in, sat down, and waited for me. And then when I finished working with one person, that person left, and the next person came in. Meanwhile, Hasey, like all good dogs, slept most of the time. And she slept under a table and could not be disturbed, except for food or to go out. But otherwise, she slept all the time. However, what I noticed was that when a patient came to the door, frequently somebody I'd never seen before, but somebody who I ultimately discovered could not communicate with me. They couldn't really talk to me. They would just sit there and stare at the floor. When they came to the door and opened that door, she woke up and came and sat where they were going to sit. And she would sit in front of them, and people felt more comfortable with the dog than they did with me. And these were very sick people, from describe the ordinary point of view, and had tremendous trouble communicating with another human being. They were considered psychotic. Most of them had been in a hospital. I was well known for being able to work with these people. That's why I saw so many of them. And she would stay there throughout the entire time that they were there, sit in front of them, look up at them, and they would talk to her. Of course, I would hear what people were saying. And she would pay apt attention to them. Her eyes were focused on them for whatever time they were there, which was usually 45 minutes to an hour. And when they got up to leave, she went back under the table and went back to sleep. Every single time patients like that came, even when they were coming for the first time, she would get up and walk over and sit down in front of their chair or the couch. And I observed this, and I was amazed. How the hell did she know that such a sick person was at the door? I didn't know that. Somehow she knew. She also knew when somebody came, somebody who was in very deep grief, not crocodile tears, but somebody who was in profound grief, she would do the same thing. She would get up, and if this person happened to lie down, as some patients did, she would climb up on the couch and sit on their chest and just sit there. And she wouldn't move until somehow that grief passed in its acute form. And then, once that happened, she would get up, go down, go back under the table, and go back to sleep. And she did this consistently for 11 years. This wasn't something that happened once or at a certain time of her life. She did this. She was with me for 11 years until she died. And she did this every single time. Now, that informed me that there are other ways of knowing except through the logical mind. Then people did studies on animals, dogs and cats, in which they did videos of these animals during the day when I don't know who owns who, left and went to work, and how they would get up maybe a half hour or 45 minutes from whatever place they were sleeping and go to the window or the door and sit and wait. And the person was just leaving work. They hadn't quite left work. This was consistent. And there are movies of this sort of thing, books about it. And then I had another experience. I went to live in London for a period of time where I discovered Chinese medicine. And while I was living there, I was living in a community, and there was a woman living in this community who was a Catholic nun. On weekends, she went back to the convent where she was a teacher. She taught history. But during the week, she lived in this community. And she had a dog. The dog was named Jason. He was a combination that the British had invented of a German Shepherd and a Collie. And as you can imagine, this was a huge dog. This dog followed her everywhere. She lived on the second floor. I lived on the first. This dog slept outside of her room. He would have nothing to do with anybody else. You couldn't, I mean, he was not a threat to anybody, but he was just not interested in anybody except her. And wherever she went, he went. One day, and she and I became very close friends. She had a tremendous influence on me spiritually. And one day we were in another part of London, and we're taking a taxi back to this community. And it was about a 15, 20-minute ride. And she sat on one part of the taxi and I was on the other. These are English taxis, are very different from ours. And she leaned forward, and she was not a very talkative person. The British aren't. They're very, laconic. And she leaned forward and she said, she said, I can't take Jason with me anymore back to the convent. The convent won't allow me to have a dog because they say they've got too many dogs. And so I'm not allowed to keep Jason. And I was about a few weeks from going back to the United States. I'd been there 6 months. And she said, would you consider taking Jason with you back to the United States? Because I can't keep her here anymore. So I said, well, at that time I was married to a woman who was, I would call an earth mother. She loved little things, children, animals. We had 7 cats and 2 dogs at that time, or 8 cats, I can't remember. And everybody dropped their children off for whatever reason. I had a 6,000 square foot house. This was that little house that I had morphed into a 6,000 square foot house. And so it was filled with small furry things or children, and they had their own part. The 6,000 square foot house had a part for children. The children had their own house. So I said, I think that my wife would be more than happy to have another living thing running around. But I'm pretty sure, so I think, there won't be any problem. We got back within 15 or 20 minutes to this community. And when you opened the door, my room was immediately after you entered on the left. And we opened the door, and lying outside of my door was Jason. And from that moment on, Jason would have nothing to do with her. Slept outside my door and followed me everywhere. So there are ways of knowing that don't fit into our ordinary logic. Ways that I think little children have. I think we have it when we're born, and when the first year or 2 of life, we know a lot about the people around us that doesn't come from books. And so I think that heart, mind, balances. And Einstein wrote about this in a number of different ways because he knew about it. It informed him. It's something I think that's inherent in all mammals, at any rate, all living things. I can't be sure of other kinds of living things, but I suspect that it's true for everything. This heart-mind is the original way of knowing. And how the kidney brain developed, I'm not intelligent enough or smart enough to know how this all worked out. But what I do know is that they both exist. I've experienced both of them personally, as well as through these animals. And I can tell you about a cat. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about animals, but I had a cat when I was in medical school. I went to Cornell University and Cornell Medical College, and she was a little kitten, and I called her Cornelia. That cat and the woman I was married to at that time did not get along. My wife was very jealous because I loved that cat. And the cat slept with me at night. When my wife went to sleep, the cat would jump up and slept the rest of the night with me. But I lived in a 5-story walk-up when I was going to medical school on First Avenue in New York. And when my wife was out, the cat would come out, we'd play games with each other, throwing a... Those days there was a little thing called a handball, and the floor sloped, and I'd throw it up, and it would roll down, and she'd lie out and would not look and just hit it, and we had a lot of fun. At any rate, the minute my wife opened the door, 5 flights down, I could tell when my wife was coming. This cat became alert and disappeared. And you did not see that cat again as long as my wife was in that apartment. And she knew when she came in, 5 flights down. Then my wife became jealous because I had this cat. She wanted a cat of her own. So there was a pet store downstairs, and I said, well, why don't you go down and find a cat in there and bring it home, and that would be fine. And so she went down, and she was gone for about 4 hours, and I got a phone call from the owner of the shop, and he said, would you please come down? There's somebody here I understand you're married to who's driving me crazy, and I would appreciate it if you come down and resolve things. So I went down, and we picked out this magnificently beautiful male cat. Cornelia was a female. And we called him Dennis the Menace. I don't know if you ever heard of Dennis the Menace. It was a cartoon character. And he was a little tiny kitten, and what went on between them was a lot of fun. Ultimately, they cohabitated and produced kittens. Everybody wanted their kittens. But we kept one. And when I was finished in medical school and then went through my internship in the Bronx, we lived downstairs in a basement apartment. And at any rate, when I started my residency, I had to move back to Manhattan. And all the apartments there were very, very small. And as an intern, I made $1 a day. As a resident, I think, working every day and weekends, I made like $2,500, I think, for the year. At any rate, I couldn't afford very much. And so we got this very small apartment, and my wife suddenly said she didn't want Dennis the Menace anymore. I had to get rid of him. I had to get rid of him. And she refused to move into that apartment if Dennis the Menace went. She preferred his son, one of the kittens that we kept. So at that time, in addition to doing my residency, I had a cousin who was married to a doctor up in the Bronx. And In those days, doctors did night calls, went to people's houses. And he was getting on, and he didn't want to do these night calls anymore. So in addition to working all day as a resident, I worked for him all night, from midnight to 8 a.m., taking his night calls in the Bronx. And so I didn't know what to do with Dennis the Menace. And he had somebody who cleaned his office. And so she was a black woman, and I asked her if she wanted a cat. And she said, yeah, I'd love to have a cat. So I introduced her to Dennis the Menace, who really became this magnificently beautiful animal, huge. And so she lived way up in the north part of the Bronx. I drove all the way up to her apartment and delivered Dennis the Menace to her. About 6 weeks later, I got a call from this woman. She said, you have to come and take Dennis the Menace away. Because, first of all, when I come home, he's never there. And when I'm not home, he does very unpleasant things on my pillow. So I had to drive all the way back up to the northern part of the Bronx. And she came to the door, opened the door. And as soon as she opened the door, I said, well, where's Dennis the Menace? She said, I have no idea. I never see him. And I suddenly heard this wail, this cry, this almost inhuman cry, come from somewhere inside her apartment. And so I followed the sound, and out from under this old-fashioned bathtub that was on feet up off the ground, came Dennis the Menace. He came out, and he leaped onto my chest and dug his nails in. And from that point on, and I drove him all the way back down to Lower Manhattan. While I was driving, Dennis the Menace clung to my chest, buried his head in my chest, and wouldn't let go. Now, I hadn't seen that cat for 6 weeks. He didn't even see me. All I did was ring the bell, and she opened the door. We had a couple of words of conversation at the door. And that cat, far more than any dog I ever had, was attached to me. And I had no idea about that. So these are things, and I could go on with them. Things that children know that have to do not with the brain, but come from the heart. And so there is this heart mind, and it's essentially, in my way of thinking about the heart, which I wrote about in a book I wrote, first book I wrote, it's one part of the heart which is, in a sense, illogical, from which all creativity comes. When Rodin, the great sculptor, said that when he, I think it was him, or maybe it was one of the ones during the Renaissance, who said when they look at a piece of stone, they don't see the stone, they see the statue. And that is what all creativity is about. That's, what all art is about. That's whatever I hear people tell me they're doing with their patients. That has nothing to do with anything they could have figured out. I used to try and spent one day a week going over each of my patients, deciding what I thought was wrong and what I would do about it. But I found that the minute I walked into the room where they were, everything changed. And I suddenly saw something entirely different and did something entirely different. And if one thing didn't work, something else came to me. And had nothing, I think doing that brain work is very important. But what actually evolves comes from some other place. And all art is that way. But the heart has these 4 parts that I mentioned. One part, which we call yin, is the creative energy that comes out of the collective unconscious that has no real order to it. But there's the yang part of the heart, which is the part that sees, that is able to take that vision, what Rodin or the other great sculptor, I can't think of his name, saw in that rock, that is the part of the heart that can actually chisel away and actually make that statue. So first you have to have the vision, and then you have to have that ability to actually put that vision into some kind of concrete form, whether it's a painting, a poem, a picture, an invention, an acupuncture treatment. It's a necessary part in terms of your being a human being, because if you just have the vision and you don't have the ability to put it into some kind of form that other human beings can recognize, you're going to go crazy. Because ultimately our sanity depends on our connection with other human beings. It's how that other people see us and hear us and so on that form who we are. So it's necessary to have that other part that actually puts your vision into some kind of form that can communicate with other people so that other people recognize you, see you. Now, the other part of the heart is what anybody who's ever created anything, and I discovered when I wrote my first book, is that as soon as you create something, somebody's going to be jealous. You need other human beings. You need that contact in order, as I put it, to stay intact. But other human beings take different forms. Some of them are very supportive, and some of them are very destructive. So the heart needs another part, which we call the pericardium. If you know in anatomy, the pericardium is the covering of the heart. It protects the heart. And so the Chinese have that same conception that there is a part of your psyche that protects that part that creates. And it's a very important part. And that's called pericardium yin in Chinese medicine. It's the yin part that protects you. And then that protective part, that covering, that protects your creation, also has a part that's necessary in order to sell it. In other words, you've created a painting, you put it up in a museum, and you put a price tag on it, and because you also need to eat. So you want to sell it. So part of your heart, that pericardium yang, is the part of you that goes out into the world. It's the salesman. It's the part of you that connects with the rest of the human race and with that creative part of you. So that somebody hopefully appreciates. Ultimately, I forget what it was that just sold for $100 million that somebody created in the 16th century. And they probably starved to death. But at any rate, there is that part. Now, the interesting thing is we talked about the triple burner before, and that the triple burner is responsible for harmony, and that the triple burner is part of that heart configuration. There are actually 4 parts. We'll leave the 4th part out for the moment, but it's important. But the triple burner works together with the rest of the heart, particularly with that pericardium yang. It's the charmer. I once had a father-in-law. He manufactured 90% of the world's fine paper. He was one of the richest men in America. And when he walked into a room, whatever he had to sell, you would buy. His energy was such that he owned that room. And you loved him. You just automatically loved this guy. I mean, if you didn't want to buy paper, you bought paper. And he went around the world playing golf and selling paper. And he was the vice chairman of Kimberly-Clark, which makes all your Kimbies for your babies and everything. He just had that ability. If he came into this room, he would own you. That guy had a triple burner. And he had a heart. And he graduated law school when he was 19 years old, Columbia Law School. So he was a fantastic example of in my life. I learned most things, actually, a lot of things that are of value to me in Chinese medicine during World War II and since. Not so much from, I never went to school, so Chinese medical school, fortunately. At any rate, so this all works together. That part of you is creating, the part of you that creates, that's creative, that the part that actually creates something, the part that protects that and defends it, and the part that sells it and connects to the rest of the world. And this is all the heart mind. And it balances that other logical kidney brain, which is really, I wrote a whole paper called Awareness, Science East and West on this subject, and another one on awareness. Because ultimately, your total awareness depends on how advanced this heart-mind becomes. I mean, you can study mathematics and become a great mathematician, but you're not going to be terribly aware necessarily, except what's on the chalkboard there in terms of, I'm sorry, I studied it for a year and a half and I can't remember. The equations, but if you ask that person's wife, they don't have the vaguest notion of what, she made for breakfast. So, how aware you are, this heart controls that part of the mind. And awareness is the single most important aspect of life. Every single religion, if you Well, you know a lot about Buddhism, probably. But Zen Buddhism, all Buddhism, it's how awake you are that defines who you are. Freud talked about making the unconscious conscious. That was his whole psychoanalytic his whole object of his psychoanalytic work was to make what's unconscious in somebody conscious, because once they became conscious, they could do something about it. Once it was operating unconsciously, it operated them rather than operating it. But there is no religion in the world, no philosophy in the world that doesn't put awakeness and awareness. And what do they say most about somebody like Jesus? He was somebody who was so awake that he was in touch with God, which was the ultimate awakeness. But that's true in the Hindu tradition. Anywhere you turn, in any esoteric part of our existence, the most important thing is awareness. And it all resides in that heart mind, to the extent that it's developed. And what I found, and I wrote in the book, and I actually copied it here if you want me to read it. What I wrote in my book, which was a book that was about psychology and Chinese medicine, that what I discovered when I started to include Chinese medicine in the work that I was doing, which was all psychoanalysis and psychiatric, was that people became very quickly aware of things about themselves, as well as others, but mostly about themselves, that would have taken years to arrive at going through the regular psychoanalytic system.
So I want to thank Dragon Rise's College of Oriental Medicine and Dr. Leon Hammer, obviously, for creating such a nice piece for us. In a moment, we are going to open up the microphones. I was looking at the faces as I listened to Dr. Leon's talk, and it's so nice to actually get faces behind these names, because I often see your names, but it's the first time I'm getting to see some of the faces that go with the names. And then there's obviously some familiar people online too that I've seen in the past. So just it's really nice for me. I want to remind you, at the bottom there's a participant icon, and that's where you can raise your hand if you have anything to share. I was on the phone with Leon while this was happening, and he wasn't able to log in with the computer. It would have been really nice, but we're recording this, and this is going to stay up for 48 hours, and I'm going to send the link to Leon so he can watch this. So if you have anything you want to share with him, please do. Leon, as usual, I just want to thank you for your wisdom and for your prolific writing and lecturing. That awareness article, I can't wait to read. And somebody put the link in the chat. It's COM, C-O-M, so Complementary Oriental Medicine, I imagine it stands for. comfoundation.org. Under their articles, you'll see one for the article on awareness he mentioned. And then there's a dragonrises.edu website, and they got a bunch of stuff as well, articles from Leon Hammer if you want to read this. Up on our screen here is Throwback Thursday. So I chose this one. And people who know me well is I like to start something, but I never really want it to be the Lorne Brown show. It is a dictatorship. I do get veto rights. It is true. However, I really do look to you for guidance and advice. And so we went through a bunch of our Medagogy legacy. For those that are new to Healthy, that's an old website that doesn't exist anymore. We don't even own that URL anymore. And we had these free little lectures on there. And so we want to bring these back and do just what we're doing now, where we create community and watch together a lecture and then talk about it after. And often I'm going to invite the speaker, if they're available and able, and around, because some of them are past, actually. Some of the people on this list, Al Stone, he's on that list there. He did a great one on the Pulse, Ridiculously Simple. We'll play his. The late Ray Rubio, that one we want to put up soon. His is a great, great lecture. I wanted you to vote on these. So what you're interested in, kind of vote on these. We're going to put it on social media as well. And this is going to help my team decide what's the next Throwback Thursday to put up. And we're going to do this for several weeks because our goal is to create community here. I want to remind you, if this kind of touched your heart and you like this, then you would really like the Conscious Tuesday lecture series we've put together. Randine Lewis did the March 24th. That's still available for another couple of hours until tomorrow at some point, because we keep it up for 48 hours. So go to healthyseminars.com/com and you'll see a link for the recording. If you're going there now and you don't see the link for Randine's recording, it means then it's expired. And every Tuesday for the next little while, we're going to have Conscious Tuesday for March and April 2020 for sure. So you can check out the list we have now. We'll keep adding to that. Great lectures. Again, if you like this heart-mind connection, you'll like Conscious Tuesday series. And on April 6th, Deborah Betts from New Zealand, Claudia Sikovitz from the States, Kate Levitt from Australia, and Emily Solomons is going to do a talk on how to support pregnant women during using telemedicine. And she's going to talk about acupressure points, diet, supplements, lifestyle, and also for those that are concerned about the guest, the evil chi that's going through our planet, what's happening with the birth outcome. So that will be on April 6th. That's available to you as well. And during the lockdown, this physical isolation where many of us aren't, oh, I'm touching my eye. I'm not supposed to do it. Just under my eye, guys. It's not in my eyeballs. While we're going through this, we've put our website on discount. So it's on 25% discount until this passes. And we also have some live webinars, and we're keeping the early bird rate. We're not expiring the early bird rate. So we're just going to keep it at the discounted rate for you guys that are interested in still their CPDs. All right. So do start to raise your hand, and then Lori and Sandra, moderators, unmute people, and then go ahead. It'd be nice to let us know where you're calling in from, where you're watching from. And then if you have any comments to share, that would be great. Again, I'm going to share this with Leon Hammer as well. And again, I thank you guys for your participation. That coupon, somebody's just asking, it's Healthy25, all one word, Healthy25, will give you 25% off of Healthy Seminars on-demand courses. Oh, my friend Alda there. Hey, Alda, nice to see you. Fellow AccuBalance is now in the Alberta area. So I see a couple of hands raised. Lorianne, do you want to get to that? I see Yvonne's raised her hand and a few more.
Yeah, Yvonne's mic is on.
Yeah,
Yvonne. Hi, Yvonne.
I don't know if you can see me. I am in the kitchen at home, and I'm working on some black medicated scar cream that we learned in herbology, and it's time. I've got patients that need it. And obviously in Florida, we're not really practicing. Well, some might be, but the governor DeSantis really did do a, kind of stop all healthcare providers unless it's life-threatening emergency. So I'm following the rules, even though I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I love Dr. Hammer. That's the school I went to. So obviously, he's A+ with me, top shelf guy. I listen to him any day of the week.
Well, thanks for sharing, and thanks for doing your part for isolating so the hospitals can handle the people that need to be taken care of. And this too will pass, and eventually majority of us will have it, and then we will continue on as life. At the Conscious Tuesday talk, Yvonne, that we had on Tuesday with Randine, she was, what's the message? What's happening here? And basically, and we're not using the term, by the way, we're calling it the guest, evil chi, the C word, for a couple of reasons. YouTube, Google, Facebook, they're actually penalizing you. If that word shows up and you're not one of the official government agencies, you're going to kill your SEO, and they're going to put you to the back seat. So we don't want to even use it because it will affect everything that you're wanting to do to share, and we just don't want to give it energy. But they said the message basically is, Mother Earth, the universe has sent you to your room to self-reflect. It's time to be. And Leon was talking about the heart and the pericardium, about the inspiration and then the activity. And I like how Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now and the New Earth, he talks about that your doing comes out of your being, and so that's the yin within the yang. And so many people are reacting. They're I got to do telemedicine now. I got to, and we're all in the doing. You can see the governments. It's very reactionary. And what I got from Leon's talk is to get quiet, create awareness, to tap into that part of you, that creativity. When the science knows, the new science of consciousness talks about the brainwaves going into alpha brainwaves and theta, then you tap into areas that you normally don't access, into this massive brain, and you come up with crazy ideas. He mentioned the Einstein stuff, right? You come up with those ideas. Right now, if you're in high beta, you're in fight or flight, you're in alarm, you don't access the wisdom. You're in reactionary. And that's what's happening in the world. And so we, as Taoists, Chinese medicine practitioners, the idea is to get into that being now, to get quiet, to get still. You have been given permission to not do. And so now the doing is just being. And then out of that being, you'll have inspiration to do the do. It'll be ease, it'll be effortless. So that's why it was so great to hear Dr. Leon hammer on that talk. Is there anybody else that would like to share? Come on, there's a couple hundred of you here. No, everybody's so shy. Now you get a chance to talk. I may call on you. I see people like Brian. You're brilliant. You always have some good things to say. There's Gretchen. Nobody has anything. No comments, because we're going to wrap it up, but there's no comments. Take a look at each other. Wave. Do you see each other? Is anybody recognizing people they haven't seen for a while that you're friendly with? Colleagues? Have you seen some colleagues on here? Yeah, I'm seeing some heads going up and down. That's wonderful. All right. So what we're going to do next is we're going to mute everybody. So you're all going to have microphones in a second. And I just want you to start saying hi, hello, talking to each other. It's crazy because the sound goes chaotic, and then every once in a while the system will pick up somebody and your face will show up, and I just love how that does that. And we did this last time. So let's connect for the next 3 minutes. Just go ahead. If you see somebody, say hi, hello. Team, can you unmute everybody, please?
Oh my goodness.
Hey,
Oh.
hi, Andrew.
Hey,
From Virginia and Calvin.
Hey, hey.
Sandra.
Andrea.
Janine.
Hi, everyone.
Very much. It's been really, really wonderful.
Nice to see everybody.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, James.
Everyone, Madsen.
Hi.
This was such a great talk. Thank you so much.
Hey, hey.
Thank you.
From Pennsylvania.
Hey, Luna, thank you.
Everyone.
Everybody, this is Omo.
Yeah.
All right, let's mute people for a second. Thank you guys for participating in that. That was awesome.
Thanks, Lauren.
So thank you guys for doing that. We got Throwback Thursday, so we have the poll. We're going to put it on Healthy Seminars Facebook page, so you can check that out. So we're going to do this again on Thursday, where we get together, watch a lecture. We'll have a teaching. This one, it was heart-mind connection. It can be anything on Chinese medicine. This one, we just thought, because there's some anxiety and concern, this was a good topic to start with. We got healthyseminars.com/calm for the Conscious Tuesday. The theme is always calm in the presence of uncertainty. The purpose is for you to find that self-care, to get grounded, take that, and then go share it with your community through telemedicine or any other way you want to do that. Throwback Thursday is just about community. It's just about getting together that we don't see each other very often. So what we're doing today, what we did today, and then just learning together. And then afterward to discuss. And again, I hope to have some of the speakers join us if it's possible, so they can be part of that discussion after their lecture. So that's what we got on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Every once in a while, we'll have something spontaneous, I'm sure. We've put the website on sale for you guys. Somebody had asked, so we said, why not? So the sales on the whole on-demand recorded site is on sale, 25% off with coupon code healthy25, at least until April 17th. And if this lockdown isolation continues, then we'll keep the site on sale until that's lifted. The live webinars that are upcoming, so there's actual live webinars upcoming, they're already discounted at 25% or more in the early bird rate. So the coupons don't work on the live webinars. However, we're keeping the live webinar early bird rate. We're not expiring them. Although they're supposed to expire, they're not going to expire. And then Tuesday, April 6th, we're going to start a series. And the first one for sure I know is free. I don't know what the long-term plan is, but with Deborah Betts, Claudia Sikovitz, Kate Levitt, and Emily Solomons on supporting pregnant women virtually, telemedicine, and all the things that you can do with your tools from a distance to support these women that are pregnant. So the babies aren't going to stop, right? They're going to keep going. So we're going to support them. And do the poll, check us out on Facebook. And guys, it's physical distancing. Just remind yourselves of that. It is not social distancing. Physical distancing is the term we're adopting. And then social innovation, social solidarity. So thanks for coming out. Let's do this weekly. Let's learn together, and let's be a light to everybody. And remember, fill yourself up. This is your chance to go inside, self-reflection, take care of yourself, and have that being, have that doing come from your being. And Leon Hammer put it so well. Also, check out the dragonrises.edu website for all those articles that Leon had mentioned. If anybody else has anything they want to say, raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to close this room until next Thursday. And I hope to see many of you this Tuesday on March 30 or 31st, whatever that Tuesday is. I think it's the 31st. Will be Keith Bell. Keith Bell is going to be doing the Conscious Tuesday on March 31st. Please share the recording link with your colleagues. And until next time, be well.
Person. There's one.
Oh, we got Mario. Go ahead, Mario. You have audio, Mario, if you want to talk. Lorian, Mario's mic is on, right?
Yeah.
All right, we'll give you 3 seconds. Otherwise, we're not hearing you. So maybe their mic's not working with it, but you've released their mics. All right. Next time, guys. Be well. Take care.